Welcome to the Insight Podcast. Joining me on the show today is Jeffrey Boadi. Jeffrey is a passionate researcher and advocate for all things plant-based health and wellness. He is such a positive and reasonable voice in the self-development space, and definitely one of my favorite accounts on Instagram for his blend of recipes, workouts, and just general life advice. So I talked to him about what he's changed his mind on in the last 5 years, lessons he's taking into 2025, what he believes most people get wrong about habits, and his top tips for reaching your goals, the balance between discipline and being flexible, and why they both have a role in a happy, healthy life, the food group he wants you to add to your plates and Buddha bowls, and much, much more. Before we start, I have a small favour to ask. If you haven't already, please do hit the follow button wherever you're tuning into this episode. And if you've been following the show for a while, I'd really appreciate it if you rated the show too. This will help more listeners discover the podcast and the insights from all of my amazing guests. Right, now for my conversation with Jeffrey Boadi. Enjoy. I'm going to throw a curveball at you because I heard a question on a podcast I was listening to today, Mark Manson's podcast, and he asked his guests this question. I thought, I think I'm going to use that on Jeffrey. So he asked his guests, and I'm asking you now, what have you changed your mind about in the last 5 years?
Oh, it's an interesting question. I think the first thing that probably comes to mind is that, of course, I've been, I guess, most known for promoting a plant-based diet and kind of educating people on how to do it in the healthiest possible way. And when I went plant-based, I'd say, 7 years ago, now 7.5 years ago in 2017, at that moment, you kind of think it's like the best thing ever. It's the best diet that everyone should lean into, that everyone has to do. Like, if you're not plant-based, you're not going to reduce your risk of disease, even if you're eating some animal products. But I think over the years, I've very much changed my mind and kind of relaxed on that focus, where, of course, I still believe that a well-planned whole food plant-based diet is a very, very health promoting dietary pattern. It's something that I'm still leaning into very, very heavily. I know so many others are. But that's not to say that if you have animal products in your diet, you can't be healthy. You know, I've definitely changed my mind on that and particularly where I've kind of expanded my focus from a health standpoint into the mental resilience side of things, the discipline side of things, the training, the sleep, all of these other elements that we can kind of slot into that holistic wheel. You know, it kind of takes less pressure off dietary choices being the sole focus. And of course, we know that they're so important, but there are so many other elements that contribute to someone's baseline level of health. So yeah, I'd say I've definitely changed my mind on the fact that the belief that whole food plant-based diet is the best diet, bar none. And I still see people say that, and I just don't agree with that, because I think there's nuance. Like, how can we say that a plant-based diet 100% is better than a diet that's 90 or 95% plants? How can we say that? You know, and then obviously factoring in all of the other elements of health that someone may be leaning into. So yeah, I definitely say that I've changed my mind on that and relaxed on that for sure.
So I think I was about a year behind you in the plant-based journey. It was 2018, I think, that I switched up my diet. I just thought I'm going to try it for 2 weeks, see how I get on. Felt good. And then it's, 6.5 years later and I'm still plant-based,
Yeah.
And it's easily done, isn't it? Because you watch the documentaries, you listen to the kind of the big voices in that space, and they're so convincing, and you're just like, yep, this is it. I'm going to get evangelical and I'm going to spread the word about this diet, and we get quite militant, and then I'm like you, where I've just started to, when I first found you on Instagram and seeing that you had a more subtle approach to your message, and other people as well saying look, it's a great approach, but there's a bit more nuance here, and we can't just be
Yeah.
making these really bold statements, which is funny because that crowd uses that against the other crowd, and yet they're using the same tactics, and it's like, oh man.
Exactly that. That's the thing. I think, it's often, you've got to look at yourself and see how you're putting your message across, and whether there's like concrete truth to it. And I know with social media, you're kind of rewarded for having really polarizing, strong views. Like nuance tends to get lost in the conversation on social media, as I'm sure you've seen in many pockets of the internet. But yeah, I just don't think that we can, we should have a sense of nuance and a sense of, I have this saying that I really strongly like and believe in. I think that it's important to have strong opinions, but hold them loosely. So it allows room for nuance. It allows room for conversation. I'll give you an example. So I remember, I think it was about a year and a half ago, I put a poll on my Instagram stories, just kind of asking people, in the community, how many people are actually 100% plant-based. And it was 25%. A quarter of my community on Instagram is plant-based and 3/4 are not. I get messages from people who are saying that they're meat eaters, but they're really interested in the way that I approach health and the way that I kind of disseminate ideas and recipes and things like that. And for me, that allows for a greater and more even spread of these ideas, and people becoming more and more in tune with it and interested in it without feeling like they're trying to be backed into a corner, or without feeling that they're being judged. So I think that's the best way to approach it, in my personal opinion.
Absolutely. Right. 2024, I feel like was a big year for you. Some life events happened.
Yeah, crazy. Yeah, so, getting married, moving house, all that stuff. Yeah, lots.
How do you feel looking back on that year?
I mean, it's crazy because it was a lot happened, like a hell of a lot happened. So obviously, I know we discussed in our previous episode that we did together that I was widowed in 2021. Obviously, grateful to have met someone new, and then we've kind of got married. So we had a wedding in Ghana. So we both Ghanaian. So we did our traditional wedding in Ghana. So
the pictures,
we had loads of our friends and family. Yeah, loads of our friends and family come over to Ghana, which was incredible. Yeah. So we had like a whole week and a whole itinerary of things for people to do, and loads of friends and family came out, which was amazing. And then obviously the ceremony was just like incredible. And then we obviously had our wedding, our white wedding, as you call it, here in July. So that was, so April was Ghana and then July was the UK. Then we went on honeymoon. And then obviously we'd moved house in between the two weddings as well. So there was all of that stuff. So yeah, it was a very, very busy time. And I feel like, again, one of the things that I've always found so useful in these moments of like high stress and high stakes and whatnot is to just continue to lean into those habits, like continue to eat well, continue to train, because that just keeps me sane. Yeah. You know what I mean? It just keeps me in a good mental place, because it's very easy to just go off the rails when so much is happening around you. So yeah, I'm feeling pretty good. I was hoping for, a quieter year this time round, but obviously we've got, more personal, highlights, which are going to be coming. So yeah, really excited, but yeah, last year was definitely a busy year, but I think you kind of stretched in a way, and you're able to kind of just find where you're able to piece things together. So yeah, it was good. Obviously, it was an amazing year, even though it was busy, but it was great.
Yeah, the good busy. With that lesson around keeping up the habits, is that one of the biggest lessons that you're maybe taking into 2025? Are there any other lessons that you're taking into this year?
I think that's probably one of the habits, or one of the kind of focuses that I've had for a long time now, because I think it's very easy to, and this also goes for like people who are maybe kind of new into trying to build their habits or improve their diet or go to the gym or whatever it may be. They feel that if they can't do everything in the best possible way, that there's no point in doing anything at all, and then they just kind of fall away. And look, life's going to happen. We're going to have weddings. We're going to have, events, babies being born, house moves, things like that. But I still think there is a very, very strong argument to find even what I would even call like a minimum viable dose. For example, I went to obviously a lot of travel last year. Back in the last year, I was in Dallas, and I always feel like it could be very easy when you're traveling to just not train at all. But I think if you just get like businesses call like their first product the MVP, right? The minimum viable product that they can kind of use for launch, right? Doesn't have to be the best of the best. Of course, they're going to iterate and improve as they go along. And I think that we should kind of approach our training and our habits around health in that regard when life gets busy, doing a minimum viable dose. So even if that means like, okay, usually I train 5 times a week. If I've only got time to train 3 times a week for 30 minutes, it's still better than doing nothing. It kind of seems obvious. I don't think I'm saying anything groundbreaking here, but it's very easy to kind of get kind of lost in that, you know what, I can't do it exactly how I'd want to do it. So I'm just not going to do anything at all. And then when life quietens down, then I can get back into it. But I just think, look, I almost think like maybe another lesson that I kind of got from last year was to embrace the craziness of life. Mm-hmm. Like you just got to embrace it. Like things are going to happen, you know, travel, holidays, starting businesses, whatever it may be. Like things are going to happen that are going to potentially put a roadblock in front of us. But if we're able to kind of find that minimum viable dose, do 2 or 3 sessions a week, just keep ticking over, keep moving the needle, even if you're not able to move it as much as you would like to in ideal circumstances. But life doesn't deal with ideal circumstances. There are going to be times where, you know, things aren't where we want them to be. So you just got to adapt and adjust.
Yeah. And I think like looking at the way you travel, but also applying that to the way you made the link of not just when you travel, but just like in a week where maybe you're feeling a bit under the weather or something's happened at work or with family or whatever, it's completely thrown you off, to not let that, you know, get to you too much. And yeah, because a 10-minute walk will still make you feel good. And, you know, 30 minutes, 30 minutes in the gym might not be your usual 90-minute HIIT session or heavy weights 1 rep max session or whatever, but it will still leave you feeling better than if you'd have done nothing. Exactly. Yeah, for sure. And I think that's the other thing that maybe, you know, in this space of self-development and improvement, and we're looking for the new hacks and new approaches to training and all that, but we can get so entrenched and so like blink of vision or whatever, can't we? Like, I've got to do this at this time, and if it doesn't happen, it's the end of the world. It's the end of the world because I didn't meditate for 10 minutes like I usually do, or I forgot to take my greens powder in the morning or whatever. And it's like, it's all going to be okay. Like, it's all going to be okay.
Exactly. But I often think as well that approach to feeling like you need to optimize each and every single thing, I actually feel that there's a sense of fragility there, because the way that I see our approach to health and well-being, or how I see it should be, is that leaning into these habits should make you robust to go out and deal with life's stresses, right? So if you're feeling like you almost can't function because you haven't, you know, had the training session that you want, or you haven't had your 10 supplements, or you haven't had your greens powder, there's a certain fragility there. I always feel like, so my friend, got a good friend, Dan Hyman, who'd actually be quite an interesting guest for your podcast. Actually, he's a health coach. He's got a fitness platform where he coaches a lot of people, and he's got a very, very interesting approach to health and well-being. And he's obviously super fit himself, in fantastic shape. And he has this saying where he goes, enjoy what you need to enjoy, but always click back into gear. You know, so for example, with holidays, and whether it's going away or the holiday or Christmas time, enjoy it. You have to enjoy these moments. As I said, bring it down to do the minimum viable dose, right? Just still keep ticking, you know, keep things ticking over, but enjoy the approach to the holidays. Enjoy time with family. Maybe eat a few things that you wouldn't normally eat. But then when it's time to click back into gear, you click back into gear, because that's where the mindset shift comes in. So yeah, that's always a good way to look at things as well.
Yeah. And I feel like the danger is as well that, well, not the danger, what am I trying to say? That, you know, if you look at that meal or something, like thinking, oh, this isn't good for me, or if you look at the time that you're doing, I don't know, spending with family or something is missed time that you could be in the gym or something. Like, I feel like if you're stressing and getting worked up, you're doing more damage than the thing that you're stressing about. You know, if you're stressing about the meal or the dessert or something, like that's doing more damage, I feel like, to your body than just having the cheesecake. And I'm trying to be the same now, just be more relaxed and flexible and enjoy my life, not be so serious about everything. Like today, you're the third guest I've recorded with, so it's been pretty intense. But my nephew has visited Birmingham today with his daughter, so my great niece, and it was like, so I had like a window of like an hour and a half to see them. And so I guess the first thought is, well, no, like I'll be in a rush for the guests and I can't do this. But then I had to pause and think, like, actually, what's more important here? It's the seeing the family. So let's be flexible and let's not be so rigid about this project that, yes, I'm working hard on growing the podcast and I want to be super well prepared and everything for. But yeah, that's kind of taken care of. But actually, what's the point if it means I'm missing out on the most precious moments of your life, which is time with family, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I think it's so important to recognize that. And as you mentioned there, like stressing about these things, whether it's having time with family or having the cheesecake, whatever it may be, I think maybe one of the things that the longevity experts or the people who are very, very into the well-being and the optimization space, they forget is actually how important community is for health. Yeah. There are full-blown studies out there looking at the likelihood of death from all causes depending on your social connections. It's one of the things when we talk about the blue zones, right? Everyone, maybe rightly or wrongly, points to their dietary habits and plant focused and plant led and this and that, but their community is so strong. Like I'm currently reading a book called Ikigai, which you may have heard of. Great book. It's an amazing book. So there's a bit in the book near the start where it talks about how in Japan there's an elderly collection of people that have what's called, I think it's called a moai, I believe it is, where they have like a group of people, so they'll meet up every now and again, they'll play like games and they'll connect with each other and they'll all like put some money in, right? And then each month, at the end of each month, one of the people within the group will get the money that will give them flexibility with like their groceries or whatever it may be. And if anyone needs financial help, there's always someone there to support them. And these people are living well into their 90s, 100s, whatever it may be. The reality is, of course, it's very interesting talking about, the vitamin D and NAC and all of these other supplements. I can almost guarantee you these people in Japan have never even heard of any of this stuff. It doesn't even register. It's not important because they're focusing on eating well, eating nutritious foods, moving their body at a low level. But the community aspect is so strong for them. And that's almost like when you've got strong community, it almost gives you a continued drive and a purpose and a will to live and live well. So again, I think the longevity experts just completely miss the benefits of being in community with your family, with your friends. You just think about how good you felt, when you had that time with your nephew and your great niece. Like these are priceless, and you can't quantify them. You can't put data on it. You can't. We just know how amazing it is for us.
And how many people do you think that's a big like gaping hole in their life? Because how much of our sense of community being lost, it's being broken down. After school clubs and sports clubs and churches and all these places where traditionally provided community for people, and we're starting to lose that because we're finding our community online, but it's just or in other ways, or just becoming so polarized and individual that it's falling apart, isn't it? And it's something that is missing for people.
100%. And I think if we think about like, mental well-being is becoming such a big thing that so many people are talking about. People are struggling with their mental well-being, and people are pointing to all sorts of things, but I think they're maybe just forgetting, as you say, like, after school clubs, not as many people are going to church these days. Like, these are places, yes, for example, a church is a place of worship, but it's also a place of community and fellowship with other people, who are on that kind of same journey. Like, for me, like going to church every Sunday with my wife is super important, obviously from a standpoint of strengthening our faith, but also being in community and being in fellowship with fellow believers and being around them. It's just so important. You just leave so filled. Do you know what I mean? And yeah, I think social media has definitely separated people in the sense where they're led to believe that they're being social because they're responding to 100 tweets every day, but you're sitting by yourself, and just not able to truly connect, because true connection between two human beings can never, and I mean never, be replicated through social media. And this is not to say that these platforms don't have benefit. Like, we're doing this because of social media. So there's so many benefits to it. However, the things that human beings truly crave, community, connection, fellowship with each other, these really are found in their best form when we're in person connecting with one another. And as you say, the kind of diminishing rates of these after school clubs, or these whether it's youth clubs for young children, or people's church attendance, like, it's definitely having an impact in going forward in the long run.
I've heard it described. I don't know if it might have been Laurie Santos, like the happiness researcher over in America.
Oh, yeah.
I'm pretty sure she talked about online connection and social media as being like the processed food version of connection, or like the empty calories version of it. So it's like you feel like you're getting something, but actually it's just not the same, and actually it's maybe damaging. Yeah. And when I say
it's perfect way
go on.
No, I say it's a perfect way to look at it. But go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, when I say community is missing from people's lives, I want to be clear. Like I'm talking about myself in that. Like I feel like it's something that I have not worked on enough, and there's some aspects of I'm a bit of an introvert, and I like alone time, and actually can do really well with long periods of being by myself. But I've had little glimpses of last year of, actually maybe this isn't quite right, and I need to be seeing more people, and I need to make more effort. I think there's an aspect of, you expect community to come to you, and that's just not going to happen. Like you've got to put the effort in. It's like with friendships and family, like if you're going to maintain or even amplify those relationships, the onus does fall on you. And I feel like I'm missing out on community, and I need to put a bit more effort in. And so that means when I go to, I don't know, the gym that I go to, that I need to look people in the eye more and ask them how they are, instead of, it's almost like I expected people to come up to me and be friendly with me. And it doesn't work like that, does it? And it's the same at a new job or something like that. Like I'm trying to, if I go into a new school or work on a new project with someone, I'm trying more to actually connect with people.
I think it's one of the ones where it's like maybe most people have that view. So like you're thinking, for example, in the gym, you're expecting people to come up to yourself. Maybe other people are thinking the same thing. So there's almost that icebreaker is maybe needed. And it's almost like once the ice is broken, then people feel a little bit more free. They feel a bit more relaxed to be able to speak and kind of discuss. And whether it's, let's catch up for a coffee, or let's get a training session. And like, this is one of the things that I love doing. I know we were trying to connect last year. There were so many different moving parts, but to be able to just connect, have a training session, do something that we're both passionate about. I'm sure we'll try and find some time this year to do it. Hopefully it's going to happen. We'll definitely do it. But that's really important, and it just helps to, continue to build those bonds between two human beings.
We've talked a little bit about habits, and I think you've already mentioned some of the missing ingredients of like changing habits, minimal viable product and stuff like that. But is there anything else before I move on to my next question? Anything else about, because we're in the start of 2025, people have set New Year's resolutions. Maybe 2 weeks in, people are getting to that point where, the novelty's worn off, and maybe they're thinking about quitting that new habit that they really wanted to keep up. Is there anything else that's kind of missing in terms of habit change or maintaining habits? Because I know it's something you're really interested in as well.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things here. I think one of the things that's really important is that when you want to change habits, whether it's you want to change your dietary habits, you want to start training more, you want to start sleeping better, you actually almost have to, the old part of you almost has to die. Like it has to become a part of who you are. And that might see you become a new person. And being a new person might end up seeing you not alienate yourself from people, but like you might be seen as very different to like friends and family who have always known you a certain way. So that's why a lot of, people report that their friends and family almost feel threatened and almost belittle them when they're making habit changes in their life. But that's just the price that you have to pay. Like if you truly want to be someone who eats well on just without even having to think, you want to be someone who gets up early and goes to the gym. You actually have to, you can say these things, but you actually have to they have to be ingrained and become a part of who you are. And that requires some kind of self-reflection and change in terms of, do I actually really want to become this person? Because you have to change and shift in a way. And also getting clarity is really important. It's very easy to be like, I want to eat better and I want to train. But if you say things like, I want to train 3 times a week for 45 minutes to an hour, and then I want to eat 80% of my meals at home. That gives you a bit more clarity to be like, right, now I can actually, these are like quantifiable, right? So you can see, okay, I've eaten out maybe once or twice this week or whatever this month. That means that for the rest of the time, I'm committed to eating my meals at home and cooking from scratch. And then you're able to actually, like, as you say these things and actually do them. And that also builds confidence as well, when you say certain things that you're going to do and you actually follow through with them. And that's maybe another area where people fall slightly short. And also putting less pressure on like resolutions. Resolutions, I've got to do this for blah, 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 blah. Because then when you fall off one part, you might think, oh, you know what? I can't be bothered. And it's difficult. And as I say, there's a lot of moving parts. And, we can also point towards just making small changes that I've spoken about so much on social media and in my newsletters. So I think those are the real keys when it comes to really locking in new habits. And it's difficult because behavioral change is not easy, but it's about really understanding, like, do you want to be this person that's moving forward and changing their life? And that might mean that certain people or certain things may fall by the wayside, but that's how it's got to be.
Yeah, and also you've got to maybe wade through a bit of a period of turmoil when you're embracing that new self. But that idea of, your the future self, the person that you want to become. Well, how does that person behave? What do they cook, and how often do they eat out, and how often do they train, and stuff like that? And it's all the James Clear stuff, isn't it? Why he blew up and why he's still like in the top sellers list like 5 years later, whether with Atomic Habits, because that stuff works. Then they're not focusing on the goal, they're focusing on the system. Like I talk about it with the kids at school who say, oh well, I want to get better at times tables. Okay, that's your goal, that's great, but we need to have a system. So what are you going to do? When are you going to practice it? For how long? Where are you going to be? All these little things, because then you've got a system in place that will help you achieve your goal.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's all good stuff.
Yeah.
I'm thinking a lot about the kind of like the balance that I not struggle with, but wrestle with all the time, between like the one side of me that is wanting to be disciplined and wanting to push myself, wanting to train hard, and then another side that's I want to like relax and I want to be content and I want to not get so worked up. And I guess we've kind of talked about this, haven't we? The being a bit more flexible with yourself. But how else do you view kind of discipline and motivation and wanting to grow? And you've maybe got a project that you want to, or a business that you're starting, and you really want to push yourself to achieve as much as you can, but also you want to enjoy the time that you've got, and you don't want to be thinking it's too far into the future that, well, I'll be happy when I get this done. Actually, I want to be happy now. So where do you land with that? How do you kind of like walk that tightrope?
I think it's a tricky balance, because I think I'm someone who's very motivated. I have a lot of self-motivation, but on the times where maybe my motivation's waning, I often just think, there's a friend of mine who he does a lot of cold showers and cold exposure, and he says he had a saying which I adopted, and he goes, we don't want to do it, but that's exactly why we do it. And that helps when the motivation's low, right? You know that you need to do something, right? When you don't want to do something, when your body's actually, that's maybe the time to lean into it. And also there's that trying to like having the awareness to know when you should lean into it, or actually versus when you should actually just rest, and when you should actually just kind of maybe enjoy a bit of downtime. And I think we have to think about what's truly important. I think for me, over the years, I've realized that the most important thing is community. I'm building my own family, like spending time with my wife is the number one. Of course, I have to prioritize at the same time, to a degree, like work and projects and wanting to build the best life for myself and my family. However, I don't want them to fall by the wayside. You know what I mean? So there's always that balance, and, finding the time to where it's work, and then finding the time where it's like, right, time spent with the people that I love, not alienating them, and not being on my phone on social or emails and things like that. It's difficult though, because it's like, it's hard to switch your mind off. I sometimes have that where it's really hard to switch off, particularly if I'm in the middle of a project or ideas are flowing in my mind or content ideas are flowing in my mind. have to maybe just write something down and just park it for later, because I don't want to, especially if like spending time with my wife, I don't want to be like, right, I'm going to go and get my laptop and start doing things, because that's just, you don't want to be in that position. So yeah, I think, look, discipline is obviously a very, very important thing. I think it's, sometimes it can be tough in terms of knowing that it's, in many ways, discipline is like just repetition in motion. And sometimes these things can be quite boring, whether it's your training or whether it's your nutrition or whether it's working on a project and getting up early and doing the things that are quite difficult to do. But doing them also brings a sense of reward and self-confidence, but also, as you say, trying to find that balance in terms of knowing when to push and then when to kind of rest, but also when to not quit. It's important to find rest, and rest is also as important as kind of moving forward with the work, because it allows you to replenish, have new ideas and whatnot. But yeah, I think there's a delicate balance to be struck, and it's not as easy as people maybe make out, where they're like, discipline and go and do this, like something that people have to find and see what works for them.
Well, that's what I find, because there's so much of the gym bro and the David Goggins kind of culture of like go, and it appeals to people, and it appeals to me a lot of the time as well. Like I've made a lot of progress in my training or the podcast or whatever, because I've had that attitude of no matter what mood I wake up in, I'm going to do this. Like this is a non-negotiable is that phrase that's thrown around, isn't it? But I also see the people that like cringe at that non-negotiable, and also there's days where I'm like, forget non-negotiables. No, I am going to negotiate with this. I don't want to do it, and I don't know. I don't know how to like advise other people on that, because it feels like maybe it's just a very personal journey where you've just got to figure out, and maybe you see how you feel at the end of the week when you've treated yourself in that way. Like, and so I don't know, is it all about like finding that balance for yourself, and there's no other way around it?
Yeah, I think so. I think there obviously has to be like I feel like there has to be a baseline, particularly with like your diet, for example. I saw an interesting quote where it said, a tree falls the way that it leans, right? Meaning that if you're truly someone who wants to be healthy, you have to kind of move towards habits that are going to push you in that direction. So that if you do end up, like, for example, if whatever way the tree is going, it will fall in the direction that it's going in, right? So if you're someone who you say you want to be healthy, you say you want to do your nutrition and whatnot, but you're still on the processed food, you're still eating Pizza Hut and Domino's every day of the week, that's the way that you're leaning. So you're ultimately going to go that way, So you still have to lean into the direction that you want to go in at a macro level. But if on a micro level, there's a day where you're not feeling all that great and you take a bit of time off, it's not the end of the world in the big picture of things. It's like if you think about like a stock market, right? You might look at a stock market action, a particular stock's action during 1 week, right? It might be terrible price action. And then you start panicking and think,
sell.
But then sell, stop loss, all that kind of stuff. But then if you look at the bigger picture, you zoom out over like a year and you look at the stock has just been gradually going up and up and up and up and up. It changes your perspective. So, I think Rich Roll had a great saying where he said, we often overestimate what we can achieve in, overestimate what we can achieve in
a year,
but then underestimate what we can achieve in 10 years. Yeah. But then I think that also comes down to people's impatience and, instant gratification, wanting things quickly. So yeah, there's so many moving parts, but I do think that we have to lean into the overall general direction that we want to go in to improve our lives. But if there are days where discipline and motivation really isn't there, or circumstances are really tough and you maybe want to just take a bit of time out, I think that's okay. We can't work 365 every single day nonstop. We can't do that. We're not robots, we're humans. We need rest, we need community, we need to be replenished. But that shouldn't take you away from the overall kind of plan and the overall goal and how you're going to build the system to kind of lead you in that direction.
I think that zooming out is that's vital. For food in particular, I feel like that's made a difference for my kind of relationship and attitude towards food, is the zooming out and not like beating myself up because I've had a bit of a weak day where I've had some like, crisp and cookies and granola or whatever, not stressing, going, okay, like actually zoom out, like to look at the whole week. I eat really, really well for the whole week. So let's not worry. Same with, I don't know, a bad night's sleep. You go, oh man, it's the end of the world. And, I hear all these podcasters talking about sleep and how important it is. And if I miss a night's sleep and I only get 6 hours, the detrimental effects, it's like, relax, chill. It was one night. If the other 6 nights you got your deep sleep, REM sleep, and all that good stuff, then just don't worry about it.
Exactly.
Talking of food, let's talk a little bit more about food, because obviously that is what you're, as you mentioned, very well known for. You put out some excellent information and delicious recipes as well on social media. Is there anything in particular about food and nutrition that people are missing? I mean, I guess we've kind of covered the habits around food and relationships, but I know you like looking at particular ingredients and the benefits of certain things. So is there anything that you think people should be eating more of? Anything people, I don't know, are missing out on, don't know about, some super grain or something like that?
Well, actually, it's interesting because I started doing a series on Instagram about ancient grains, which not many people know about. There are a lot of grains that have kind of got historical roots in Africa, in Asia, Central Europe. So things like, obviously, chia is very, very well known to people, but then foods like teff, which is from Ethiopia, super mineral rich grain, loads of iron, good amounts of magnesium. Then you have foods like fonio, which is from Africa, very popular in Nigeria. You've got buckwheat. You've got, what was the other one that I did last week? What was that one? Kamut, which is from
Egypt. Was that
from? I believe that's from Egypt. Yes, that's it. Yeah, exactly. From the Middle East, the Fertile Crescent in the Middle East. So I would like to see people eat more of these foods. I think they're, again, for a lot of people who maybe struggle with grains, a lot of them are gluten-free, so that's really beneficial. So great for digestion if people have celiac or they struggle with their digestion in some ways. Very mineral-rich as well. And I think minerals are one of a very kind of key component of nutrition that maybe people aren't paying as much attention as they should. Obviously, everyone talks about magnesium. We know how important magnesium is, and loads of people supplement it. Then you've got trace minerals like selenium, which is really rich in kamut, which is super important for thyroid function. And that's one of the trace minerals, actually, if someone's on a plant-based diet, that they should probably focus on. You often find selenium in a lot of the vegan multivitamins that are out there. So yeah, I like that group of foods. I think they're very versatile. You can use them in many different ways, like teff and amaranth and what's the other one that I did? The fonio. They can be used as porridges, or they can be made into savory dishes. As I said, good versatility. They're pretty cheap as well. I often recommend that people get them from like wholesalers. So I always buy them in bulks, whether it's like 1 kilo or 2 kilo bags. They often work out very, very cost effective in that regard. So yeah, more ancient grains, like they're just really easy to get into the diet, very nutrient rich. So I'd definitely like to see people eat more of those for sure.
Yeah, that's cool, because maybe we focus a lot on the rice, the pasta, and it's like, actually there's so much more out there, isn't there? People, I guess, know more about couscous and quinoa and these other options, but there's more, aren't there? It's the same with the hundreds of different types of potato and tomato and stuff. Like there's all these things that have got different colours and benefits, of course, haven't they? Because of their variety.
Exactly, and I think that's one of the great things about the plant-based diet. I think there is so much variety. Like I'm 7.5 years in; it's going to be 8 years in August, and I'm still like exploring variety and just looking at different ways in which you can combine foods and just enjoy the foods in a very healthy, nutritious, but also an exciting way. So yeah, definitely would like to see people get more ancient grains, particularly teff. Teff is probably one of my favorites. I do like having teff porridge very often. It's very tasty as well.
Teff
I like it.
Porridge. So what else goes in teff porridge? I need to try it.
So you just get the teff grain. It takes longer to cook than your standard porridge oats. But I would typically cook teff. You'd cook it like you'd cook a porridge. You maybe need to add a bit more liquid, but I tend to use coconut milk, and it gives it a really nutty and almost like sweet flavor to it. And then just top it as you would with your typical oatmeal. So I'll put blueberries on there, maybe a bit of cinnamon in there, some banana. And yeah, man, it's good. I'm a big fan
I'm
of
trying it. I'm going to try it. And you're a blueberry man, aren't you?
Yeah.
You can't talk enough about.
Blueberries goes without saying. I mean, I get so many messages from people going, "You've got to be onto blueberries," or "I'm eating a cup a day." And again, not even just of the fact of all the health benefits, because we know about the health benefits for your brain health, for your recovery, from training, from reducing diabetes risk. Polyphenols go into your gut bacteria, which is super important. They just taste great. Like it's amazing how something that tastes that good, and is in such a small kind of package is so beneficial. So yeah, I mean, I'd love to know. I tweeted the other day, I said I'd love to know how much money I've spent on blueberries over the years, because it has been a lot.
Yeah. I get the frozen bags from Aldi, and that's how I do my overnight oats. Just pop a load of those in.
Yeah, they're really good. I think they're really cost effective as well, because fresh blueberries are not cheap, especially if you're buying organic and you want to minimize your pesticide exposure, if that's something that people wanted to do. But frozen berries, I always have them as well. They go great in smoothies, as you say, with the overnight oats as well. I've got a couple of overnight oat recipes actually that I've got cooking in the mind that I want to put into the social media sphere. So yeah, definitely be using some of those frozen berries.
Do you have any weaknesses? We're talking a lot about colourful, healthy, whole foods, but is there anything that's a weakness for you?
Do you know what I would say is a weakness? I'd say I have a sweet tooth.
Same.
Obviously I've kind of I've shifted it towards having foods like dates and bananas and getting all those healthy whole foods. But there's a place near where I live. They have these. My friend told me about this. My really good friend told me about this. The place where they have these pastries. They have this cinnamon bun. Oh my gosh. If I'm ever in that area of Ealing Broadway, I have to go and get one. I just have to, But I think again, it's when you approach your health from a perspective, you know what, I want to get 90%. I'm dialed in. I'm disciplined. I'm doing whatever I need to do. The other 10%, you can obviously within reason, you can do whatever you want. Really, you can. It's not going to be you want to get to a place where if you eat a cinnamon roll or a croissant or whatever it may be, you're not even going to think about, because you know how people will often beat themselves up right after they've eaten something which is quote unquote off plan. They beat themselves up, they punish themselves in the gym the next day. I've got to run X amount of money to
burn
X amount of miles to burn off the calories. That is such a poor approach to things. If you're dialed in 90% of the time, it literally does not matter if you have a cinnamon roll. It doesn't matter.
But even if you're not beating yourself up, but you're joking about it, oh, this is my treat, this is my cheat. Even that is that's still negative. It's still an attitude. It's still an attitude of this wasn't okay. I'm going to make a joke about it, but it wasn't okay. We need to get rid of even that attitude. It just needs to be, this is okay. It's fine. Have the croissant.
Yeah, joke. Yeah, have it. Jokes there's always an element of truth to jokes. I've never been a fan of the cheat meal approach, because I almost feel like, what are you cheating on? Do you feel like your daily lifestyle is that bad and it's that kind of insufferable,
boring,
that you feel it's boring and things like that you have to go and cheat on it with high calorie, ultra processed, highly palatable foods? And then you're going to feel terrible after, and then you're going to punish yourself in the gym, and then the cycle continues to perpetuate. It's actually okay. I don't eat these foods every week. Obviously, I much prefer, I just feel good when I'm eating well, when I'm training good, when I'm sleeping good. That feeling is, in many ways, that's the cheat code, actually. When you're eating well and you're just feeling like you've got tons of energy, tons of vitality, that's the cheat code. I don't want to cheat on that. But by the same token, there's some things that I like, and a cinnamon roll is one of them. And every now and again, I'm going to get it. I'm going to think it's going to be great. And then the next day, I'm not even going to think about it. It's back to business.
Absolutely. I mean, I was in Copenhagen last year, and man, the pastries that me and my dad walked around and enjoyed. Yeah. I'm not missing out on those.
Yeah. You went to stay at, actually, maybe this was when you went to Oslo, because there's a lady that I follow who's a doctor.
Karina.
Dr. Karina.
She's my best friend's wife.
Yeah. So I remember you were out there. That was in Norway.
Yeah. So I visited them a couple of times, and I'm hoping to go back this year, because I just have the best time. Hang out with them and their two boys. Me and Dwayne, we go and do the sauna and the jumping in the fjord, the freezing cold water.
I love that.
And
I love
Also
that.
pastries and coffee as well. So you just can't beat it.
Can't beat it, man. Can't beat it at
As
all.
we were talking about that stuff, it did make me think about fasting, which I know I didn't like send over that I was, in my little outline of questions, but I think fasting is an interesting topic that I don't know if you've but it's something that I've started in the last year or two, I think, where I'll just not all the time, depends. Like tomorrow morning, I'll wake up and have my overnight oats pretty early before I have boot camp because it's so intense. I want something there. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But during the week, most of the time, I won't eat until 10, 11, maybe even 12, even sometimes 1 or 2. And it's not it's not from a place of, what do I want to say, punishment or restriction or no, this is a way to reduce my calories. It's just the way it does do that. It's just like I find I think better and I'm more clear and I'm more kind of on it in the morning when I don't eat. And it's been a really interesting thing to play with. But then also it does feel like I've, I am reducing how many calories I eat, and I may be eating a little less processed food, just because if I delay what I eat, the 3 meals that I do eat then fit into that little window. And it means that rather than me starting those 3 meals earlier, I'd usually get to the evening and want something extra to eat. And of course, when it's 7, 8 p.m., what are you going to reach for at that time? It's not like some fruit or whatever. It's usually, it's just like my way to eat less of the processed stuff that I crave sometimes by delaying when I start eating. Again, I feel like it's from a place, a good place, a positive place, but it's interesting how it has that effect. I don't know, is it something you do think about?
No, that's really interesting. I mean, there's been occasions where maybe not deliberately I've waited until sort of midday or 11:30 to eat my first meal of the day. I tend to eat my first meal of the day probably around 10 or 10:30 anyway. And then my last meal of the day will probably be around sort of 7, 8. So that's quite a large non-feeding window overnight anyway. I wouldn't necessarily say it's I'm doing it because I want to have a certain feeding window or call it fasting or whatever it may be. But I do think that it's something that has kind of benefited people. Clearly it's benefiting you. And I think, as you say, some people do gain benefit from having that smaller eating window in terms of making sure that they're getting the right foods in, and also maybe stopping themselves from eating too late at night to kind of disrupt their sleep, digestion and whatnot. It's an interesting one. This is a while back. This would have maybe been around 4 or 5 years ago. I did do I think it was 72-hour water fast or something. And it was interesting because I think by the 3rd day, my mind was so clear, it was so sharp that I was like, wow, okay, this is really interesting. I haven't done it since. I don't think I've ever really, I've not really felt the need to. Maybe I might explore and dabble into it at some point. But yeah, it's definitely an interesting phenomenon. And there's some good science, some interesting science that kind of backs it up for, autophagy. And also I think there's value in kind of giving your digestive system a bit of a break as well.
It makes sense, doesn't it, that evolutionarily as well, that we wouldn't be eating for 16 hours every day when our ancestors perhaps would have been having 1 or 2 meals when they found, hunted or gathered their food. So it kind of makes sense. And then, like you said, it seems like it's being researched from a longevity perspective and stuff like that. I know. I think it's, I think if people haven't done it, it's maybe something worth experimenting, just see what happens if you do 10 to 6 or something. Yeah. Right. Last thing I want to ask you about is skin on the kiwi.
I've been getting a bit of heat for this on the socials.
How I don't know, how hot has the heat been? Are there some people that are actually that's gross?
Some people that are you need to be locked up for that. So to be fair, there was a couple of people who were actually I've always kind of done this. I thought this was just normal. Then you have a number of people who are like, oh wow, you can eat it with the skin on. They just had no idea. I've always been a proponent of eating kiwis with the skin on. It's interesting though, because people think that because it's so alien to them, they think, I'm recommending eating all fruits with the skin on, and I'm not saying you should go and eat a banana skin. Do not eat banana skins or orange skins. You should throw them away because that's disgusting. But kiwis, in the skin, you have more fiber, which of course is going to keep your system regular. There was a study actually that showed that, I think it was a randomized controlled trial that showed that 2 kiwi fruits per day help to relieve constipation, and that's whole kiwi fruits with the skin on as well. So more fiber, you get more folates, super important B vitamin for pregnant women in terms of preventing birth defects. You get more vitamin E, more vitamin C on top of what's already in the flesh. So it's not just a case of, and the thing is, it's actually not that bad. People see a kiwi and they think it's very fuzzy and it feels weird. It's actually okay. But if people are, they feel that it's weird, you can go for golden kiwis. So golden kiwis have a smooth skin. So you can just like eat that and you don't really feel anything at all. It's just almost like part of it. It's a very, very smooth outer layer, not like the green kiwis where there's a little bit of fuzz, varying depending on the type. So yeah, I think people are missing a trick if they're throwing away their kiwi skins. They're missing out on a lot of nutrients.
You heard it here, listeners. Try it. I've done it. I've done it. Like, I can't remember, a couple of years ago the first time, but I didn't eat into it like you do. Like, I saw your picture of like you're just bitten into it. I've like
an apple,
yeah, exactly, yeah. But I've like just sliced it up with the skin still on, and then put that in my, I don't know, oats, or just eating it like it is. And it's fine. Yeah. It's like a little bit chewy, but different texture, but absolutely fine.
Absolutely fine. Yeah. Absolutely fine. You heard it here first, ladies and gents.
Absolutely. Right. Oh man, it's been so good to talk to you again, catch up, hearing about what you've been up to. The plans for this year is cool. So yeah, thanks for coming on. Thanks for talking about these topics.
I appreciate you. Appreciate you having me again.
You're welcome. I do finish off with 3 kind of quick fire questions, if you're up for those.
Let's go for it.
The first one is, what's one lesson you wish should have been taught when you were a child?
Good question. Perhaps not to be so rigid in your thought processes. So when I was a kid, all I wanted to do was play professional football. That was all I wanted to do. I wasn't open to anything else. And if I'd had maybe a little bit more kind of flexibility and just being an openness to certain things, I think it would have been better. So yeah, I'd say that.
Next one. Is there a habit that you've maybe added into your life, or a habit that you've got rid of that's helping you feel happier and healthier? And this could also be maybe a gadget, a tech. I know you like some of those approaches as well. So.
Yeah. So 2 things actually. So I've shifted my training regime. So I'm up really early. My wife and I, we get up early at like 6 and we go to training in the morning. And I've always kind of like shifted around my training based on how my life's going. But I've always found that when I train first thing in the morning, I just feel so much better. The endorphins are flowing, the dopamine's high. It's out of the way. It's done. Then I can focus on the day. And secondly, what I would say is another habit that I've been getting in regularly is I've been using my massage gun a lot more. Now, I think as I'm getting older, I mean, I'm not old, I'm 36, I'm still pretty young. But obviously it's just from like a recovery standpoint, this is so important. I train hard, so I can't just be training hard and not recovering hard as well. So getting the massage gun out, hitting those knots daily, is something that I've kind of really knuckled down. And maybe where before it might have been like an intermittent thing and a bit periodic, I'm doing it every day now.
Nice. And the last one, if you could give everyone in the world one book, which book would you give them?
Ooh, The Power of Now, Eckhart Tolle. That book completely changed my life. From the perspective of like, we often, essentially the premise of the book is we never find peace in the present moment because we're always thinking about how the past has affected us and shaped who we are today. And then we're thinking about the future and what could potentially happen, and am I going to be prepared for this? And then we often just like lose sight of the present moment. And so the power of now is kind of like being rooted in in that present moment, in the now, and what's important right now, and how that can improve our lives. So I think everyone should read that book. I've gifted that book to a few people actually. So yeah, I'd say that one.
Yeah. It's all we have, isn't it? Right now, the present moment. It's all we have.
That's literally it.
And something that's helping me unlock that a little bit more. And I've mentioned this a couple of times on social media and with another guest that I recorded with today was I've downloaded the Waking Up app from Sam Harris, and I've been using that for like, I think a good 40 days straight now. And I think that's helping me unlock a bit of that, accessing that.
What is that? I've not heard that. What is that?
Do you know Sam Harris?
Name rings a bell.
Like neuroscientist, philosopher.
Okay, yeah.
Used to be friends with Jordan Peterson, but they've fallen out. That kind of thing.
Oh, really?
Used to be friends with Elon Musk, I think, fallen out. But yeah. So he's great. But it's like a meditation app, but they say why their approach is slightly different and how it's all about like learning the operating manual for your mind. And yeah, it's helping me. Check it out. You can get like a free trial for 7 or 14 days, I believe. So yeah, check it out.
Interesting. I'll look into it.
Right. Where can people find you? Where's the best place for people to connect with you?
Instagram is probably my main social media platform. So just at Jeffrey Boadi. Then we've also got my Twitter page, same handle, but with an underscore at the end. And then my website, www.jeffreyboadi.com. So I put more kind of longer form pieces around health and well-being, and also write a weekly newsletter as well, Wellness Weekly. So that goes out every Monday. So you can sign up for my newsletter on the website. So yeah, I really enjoy putting out those newsletters, just giving people kind of actionable tips or ideas to think about when it comes to health at the start of the week for them to implement as the week goes along. So yeah, those are the places that you can find.
It's one of my favourite newsletters. That one, James Clear, maybe a couple of others, but yeah, it's up there. Love it.
Appreciate that.
Cheers for coming on again. And looking forward to, I will be down in London this year. Definitely.
Yes, we'll catch up for sure.
Nice one. Cheers, man.
All right, bro. Take care.
Thank you for tuning in. I really hope you found my conversation with Jeffrey insightful. If you did enjoy the episode, as always, please share it with friends, family, colleagues who you think would find it interesting and helpful too. You can also support this podcast by following and rating the show on whichever app you're listening on. Thank you again, and I look forward to bringing you another episode soon.